Let's talk about how Russia is doing militarily. American military analysts say those forces are continuing to make advances in Eastern Europe, but strong resistance from Ukrainian troops is slowing their progress. According to the Times, Russia relied on swift advances of tanks deep into Ukraine when it first invaded Ukraine back in late February, but that strategy failed. The Times reports military analysts with the Institute for the Study of War, a Washington think tank, say in their most recent assessment on Tuesday, quote, Russian forces have adopted a sounder pattern of operational movement in eastern Ukraine, which is allowing them to bring more combat power to bear in their narrower goal of capturing the region. Meanwhile, Ukraine is asking the Biden administration to provide its troops with armed drones. The request comes as British Defense Ministry updated its intelligence report, saying Russia is still relying on heavy air bombardments as it turns its efforts on taking control of the east and south of Ukraine. Admiral Stavridis, does that assessment line up with what you're seeing and hearing from fellow commanders, fellow former commanders who know this area very well? This was supposed to be sort of a restart of the war for Vladimir Putin in Russia. Failure at first, didn't get to Kyiv, didn't take the capital, didn't install a puppet regime, now just focusing on the Donbass. How is it going in these early days?
We're back to the traditional Russian way of war, which is to grind it out, to terrorize the population, to throw mass at the problem. And Putin has a better opportunity here than he did trying to execute, which his forces were clearly unable to do competently, the kind of blitzkrieg you just talked about. Thank God. Partly that's because of their own incompetence. Partly it's because we were even then getting weapons in the hands of the Ukrainians. Partly it's simply the spirit and the will of the Ukrainians to resist. Now, when you're being ground down day after day, it's a tougher problem for our Ukrainian friends. Two quick final thoughts here, by the way. That same British intelligence report, which is extremely credible, very balanced, very nuanced, now estimates 15,000 Russian dead, killed in action in the first 2 months of this war. As we've said before, in the entire U.S. fight in the Iraq and Afghanistan in 20 years, we lost far fewer, maybe half that number. So that will, over time, weigh on this ability to deliver military combat at scale. And then finally, Joe, great series of quotes. I'm going to add one other one that I think is relevant here, which is Napoleon. Of course, I'm 5 feet 5 inches tall, as we talk about endlessly. And so I love to quote Napoleon because short people have to stick together in this hard life. Here's the quote. Napoleon, and by the way, I love it that Ed Luce brought up the failure of Napoleon in invading Russia in winter, which is exactly what's happening. But here's the quote. A leader is a dealer in hope. A leader is a dealer in hope. And I think that's what Zelensky is. I think that's what President Biden is. And I think together, the West and the Ukrainians, because we will take that side of the bet, I think we'll succeed here.
You know, I want to just say one thing. I apologize, Mika, for cutting in here. Admiral, could you really quickly, just for our viewers, because we have a very well-read audience, I read Andrew Roberts' biography of Napoleon and was stunned, despite the fact I've been reading history my entire life over, well over 5 decades now. I was stunned by how little I knew about Napoleon, how he would ride out, how he would go in the middle of battles. He would personally put medals on people. He was willing to let even the lowest infantry officer yell at him in front of others and tell him what he was doing wrong. He really is. I think we have, for some reason, we have a blind spot about how revolutionary Napoleon was. For us, what we read in America is he's the guy that tried to take over Europe, failed, created the Congress of Vienna, and that seems to be how we in America view him. But despite all of his many failings, you have to say that about everybody, but despite some of his dreadful failings, especially in our hemisphere, in the Caribbean, talk about Napoleon really quickly and just tell people where they should go to read more about this guy who really created modern Europe.
The Andrew Roberts biography, by the way, Andrew Roberts' biography of Churchill, another significant figure, is well worth pursuing. And comparing those two figures is a very interesting thing to do through the prism of Andrew Roberts' writing. Napoleon reshaped Europe. He created the idea of a citizen army. He was a deeply inspirational leader. He built many of the norms that we think about into modern legal theory. And, oh, by the way, he sold the United States, about half of our country, in the Louisiana Purchase, maybe the best deal ever, even ahead of Seward's purchase of Alaska. So Napoleon was imaginative, creative, inspirational, and loved his soldiers. He was a soldier's general. He made some significant mistakes, both on the personal side, shall we say, as well as on the military side, notably, as our friend Ed Luce reminds us, invading Russia with all its strategic depth. There are some lessons there on this one as well. But yeah, there's a lot to admire about Napoleon Bonaparte.
And some good books to read. And Admiral, thank you very much for being on the show this morning. Coming up, what China's COVID lockdowns mean for that country and the world. The government there is testing millions of people for the virus, but it's also being tested itself. We'll talk about Beijing's effort to stamp out protests next on Morning Joe.